guys, welcome to a new vlog. It is Saturday here and I have already gone down to the waterfront because I went to Creme because they have their like Easter pastries and stuff out, so I got a couple of those. Really cute. There's one that's like shaped like an egg, so I think it's like, I don't know if it's white chocolate, but it's like a chocolate, I think, like shell. And then the inside is this like whipped cheesecake, and it had, I think it was like a blackberry jam. That's the one that I actually ate, and it was really, really good. And then there's this little bunny that's like a hazelnut mousse kind of thing, I think, which I haven't eaten, so I'm saving that. But really good. I know that they also have cupcakes, like they posted them on their stories, but I didn't see them there. So I don't know if their cupcakes are like made to order or something. But yeah, so I went there, tried those, really cute. I went for a bit of a walk around the waterfront, and I was gonna spend longer there, but it was so windy, and obviously at the water, it's like worse, and it kind of makes a wind tunnel. Like, it was actually hard walking into the wind. So I came back here, and then I actually had a little bit of a nap again because I was out late last night. Because there was this, apparently it actually started from a class that they had last year, like a seminar that they ran about love, and they started this like folk show. I don't really know like in what context, if it was like someone's final project, and they put that together, and then they decided to do it again this year. But there was 3 singers, one of whom was one of the master's students in our program. Again, shout out to Johanna, it's a tradition now in every video. So she was performing, really cool to get to see her perform live. She's an incredible guitar player and her songs are really cool. And then there was also Sadie Skinner, who's another local musician, and Amanda Penner, who's actually from Alberta. Her partner is like an upper year PhD student at Dal as well, so she was performing songs from like a new album that she's gonna be putting out. They were all really cool. It was really great, and like all such different songs and different performers, so that was quite cool. And then a few of us went out for drinks after at Stillwell, I believe, which I've heard a lot of people talk about before, but I've never been to before. It's just kind of a tap room beer place, but it was good. I had a nice cider, so that was fun. But yeah, I was out later, and I had wound up like walking home too, because like the bus was, I was gonna have to wait 20 minutes for the bus, and it was like a 30-minute walk, so I just wound up walking home anyway. Yeah, so didn't get back till late, and then for some reason, I woke up at 8, which was not my intention today. But I have a few goals for the weekend, so I have to finish marking these annotated bibliographies, which they don't take too long to mark individually. So I want to do a few of those today and then the rest tomorrow. And then I have to do another response to some of the questions that are posted in George Eliot, and I also need to put together my like proposal for George Eliot. So I kind of know what I'm going to do. I am actually going to focus, I'd said like in a previous vlog that I was thinking about talking about mothers and motherhood, but I wasn't totally sure what books yet. I actually think I'm going to focus primarily on Daniel Deronda, and then I had been like kicking around if I wanted to bring in Silas Marner as well, which I still think would be interesting. It's just going to be if I feel like I have the space, because I think it's 4,000 to 5,000 words, so it's not a super long one. And there's so much to say about Daniel Deronda too, so I think I'm mainly gonna kind of focus on women's like complicated relationship to motherhood, and how do we make sense of, and what do we do with these women who do have complicated feelings towards maternity. Like Leonora is such an interesting character, and her like speech with Daniel is really cool. She's kind of the only one who like puts Daniel in his place a little bit. But she is a character that feels a bit like off-putting. So then she has this like, she's articulating this really important and I think like feminist message that George Eliot herself seems to be very like sympathetic to and is trying to get across in this book and in a lot of her other novels. But how do we make sense of it being delivered from this character who's positioned as being like maybe a little bit quote unquote unnatural or a little more off-putting? So I definitely want to talk a lot about her. I want to talk about Gwendolyn's kind of relationship to the idea of motherhood throughout. So we'll see. But yeah, so I'm going to be working on that kind of stuff tonight. I also have to finish Daniel Deronda in its entirety over the weekend. Well, not the entire book, but I have to finish the rest of the book. But also tonight, one of the students that's in the Wolf seminar, for her final project, she's like cooking the college meals that are described at the start of A Room of One's Own. So in A Room of One's Own, Wolf is like going to, I believe they're at Cambridge. No, they're at Oxford. No, yeah, Oxford, I believe. I have to double check that actually. But basically she eats a meal at the men's college and the women's college, I believe, when she's there, and the meal at the men's college is much nicer, basically. So she describes these two meals. I believe she ate the men's college one too, because she was there as a guest. It's all a blur. But basically, the other master student, she's cooked both of the meals. So since like a lot of us are here for Easter and everything, she invited us out to eat one of them. So I think we're having the men's college one. We're having like the nicer dinner. And then I think that she said that she'd already made the women's dinner one and had it. And she said it wasn't like as bad as you would think. So ringing endorsement. So yeah, that's really nice of her to like host everybody for that. So I'm gonna be going over there later tonight and eating some interesting British food, potentially. So I'm just making like a banana bread flavored syrup because I had some ripe bananas in the freezer and I didn't feel like making another banana bread or anything. So I was like, I'll make this syrup for coffee because I've had a banana bread latte at Dilly Dally like months ago and I still think about it sometimes and it was really good. So I'd like, you know, Googled things you can do with bananas and this seemed relatively simple. So I tried this once before, but I don't think I simmered it properly. Like the syrup tasted fine, but the process of making it was stupid. So hopefully this time it will be less so. Okay, so I've been reading for a little bit today. I've also done a little bit of marking so far, but I thought that I would just talk about the books that I read in March because I didn't read like as many as I had the month before, so I didn't want to do like a whole video on it. Plus I feel like I've talked about them a lot just in like since I was reading them actively as I was doing vlogs, but I thought I'd just like go through them a little bit. So I believe Three Parties was the last book that I'd finished in February. So the first book that I'd like fully officially finished in March, I think. I'm gonna check what I put as the red date actually. Okay, it doesn't want to show me my red date. Okay, I'm just gonna count it. I think that I finished Silas Marner at the very start of the month, I think. It's all kind of blending together. But yeah, I finished Silas Marner by George Eliot. Yeah, I think it was probably my favorite George Eliot that we've read. Like I said, I am probably Daniel Deronda has wound up being my favorite in that it's the most interesting. Like I really enjoyed Silas Marner and I think that there are a lot of like interesting elements, but I think Daniel Deronda is just a more complex story. But Silas Marner is like more compact. It's more fun, even though like a lot of bad stuff still happens. It's it's a bit lighter. It does kind of have that like fairy tale aura. It is fun because there are like elements of fairy tales, but then you also find out that these things that kind of seem like magical and sort of hand of fate are actually all have like a very plausible explanation. But there is still this sense of the town Raveloe, I think it was, yeah, Raveloe is the name of the town. And it feels very kind of magical and isolated, like it feels separate from the rest of the world. Like things happen and things come into Raveloe, but it feels kind of disconnected and like its own world. Which it does also have elements of realism because it is also this like place that's kind of on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, and we see sort of the impact of industrialization, and we see other towns that are impacted by industrialization, and that just hasn't quite reached Raveloe yet, because it is a little bit more isolated. So there is this sense of like, well, things might be changing more in the future, but they haven't changed yet. So yeah, I did really enjoy Silas Marner. I thought that that one was fun. I also thought it was funny because so when I went to put it on my shelf on Goodreads, you know how you can see like if like your friends or the people you follow have shelved it? I guess I follow Sarah J. Maas, and she'd rated it 1 star like years ago. And I just thought that that was really funny. What was the date that she posted it? Yeah, in 2009, she read it and rated it 1 star. So Sarah J. Maas is not a fan, I guess. But it did get me down a bit of a rabbit hole because I was like, I don't know, I think it's interesting that she kind of hasn't wiped her account, because I've never seen anybody posting about like, oh, these are the books that Sarah J. Maas had rated this, because kind of up until the books really went crazy on Book Talk, she was like posting and shelving things on Goodreads, which isn't that abnormal. Like lots of authors do that. Oftentimes they won't rate like contemporary novel, like current author, obviously like rating a George Eliot book 1 star is fine, doesn't really mean anything. But you know, she's not gonna like she's probably not gonna rate like a Victoria Aveyard book 1 star or something, right? Like someone who's kind of a colleague or a contemporary, like a current writer, and definitely not like a current writer in the same genre. Generally authors don't do that because it's, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of just bad form to have that on your public account. But like if you're positively reviewing things, then lots of authors still have that on Goodreads. But I did just think it was interesting that it hasn't been wiped or deleted. But yeah, she did not enjoy Silas Marner. I think I enjoyed it more than she did. Okay, I also had shelved Janet's Repentance as a reread because I was working on our presentation, and our presentation had to include Janet's Repentance. I really did more of a skim, but I counted it. Janet's Repentance, I didn't love. It's like a novella length thing. We read it at the very start of term, and then the Silas Marner presentation had to include it, I think just so that someone was doing a presentation on it. And like there are connections, but like, I don't know. We kind of felt like we were kind of like strong-arming things in. But yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I feel like it is like pretty emblematic of a lot of George Eliot's style and like the themes that she likes to deal with. I just didn't particularly enjoy the novella. Like it was fine. I didn't actively hate it, but I was ambivalent towards it. And then I actually reread Wild Man by Kristen Ashley, which is the 2nd or the 3rd book in the Dream Man series. I enjoy that one. I find Tessa, I've reread that one a few times, and the more times that I reread it, the more like cringe I find Tessa, because she's a baker, but she like describes herself in terms of cupcakes. I know. But it is just fun. I don't know. I like the two of them. I like the crimes that go on around them. I like how that works, like the kind of thriller aspects, how it is integrated into their relationship. I like the X drama. The X drama is actually fun in this one. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's just kind of like an old school Kristen Ashley. I just like felt the urge to read it. I think what it is, like why I want to reread Kristen Ashley books so much, is that she's got really good like hooks. Like the start of her books, they kind of always start in like the middle of a scene almost. Like they start kind of partway through the story. Like what some authors would do like 20% of the way in is kind of where she starts. And I just really like it. Like she writes a good prologue and a good first chapter. And sometimes I'm like, I want to go back and reread this one scene, and then I just wind up rereading the whole book. But kind of what spurred the Kristen Ashley reread was that I'd gotten an arc of her newest novel, which is The Woman from Nowhere. It's in the Misted Pines series, so the small town is very like Stranger Things, ooky spooky. It was originally, I think, the first book in the series was going to just be a standalone, and then she had the idea for another book, and she was like, I'm not sure, like, do I do this as its own standalone, whatever, and she had a friend who was like, you should put that in the Misted Pines town. So basically it's this town where a lot of crazy things happen, because these ones are more like romantic thrillers, I would say, than romances, although The Woman from Nowhere, I think, leans more towards romance. The book's kind of like flip-flop, I would say, between like being more kind of suspense thriller novels, or not full-on thrillers, but you know, like suspense mystery novels with like romantic leanings towards romantic novels with some suspense and mystery aspects. And I would say that that is The Woman from Nowhere. I really enjoyed the premise. Basically, this woman has been she's got a mysterious backstory. We don't really know what's going on. We know that she's like changed her name and has moved to this like cabin in the woods near Misted Pines. She's not sure who she can trust. She's kind of like holding her cards close to her chest. But she at one point like hooks up with this guy who's also seems like a bit of a recluse. And she's like, okay, one-time thing, whatever. But then she finds this really creepy note on her front porch that's like, you know, we're watching you, calls her a Jezebel, and she understandably is freaked. So she takes it to the cops and they're like, yeah, where do you live? You live really close to our local cult. We're not able to really do anything about them yet because like we're not sure that they're doing anything illegal. We don't have any cause to like search them, but you know, we're keeping an eye out. So you should keep an eye out. You know, we don't want a Waco situation. It's pronounced wacko. And they advised her to like, you know, get more security around home, set up cameras, do all these things. And they're like, you should get a dog up here. There's this local guy who raises guard dogs. You might not be able to get one from him, but he can help you train one. Calls him up, turns out to be the guy that she hooked up with, and he is not super pleased by the fact that she's being harassed. So the two of them wind up spending more time together. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I love a cult storyline. I actually wish that we'd had more cult. I think that it could have, like, we could have had a little bit more of that. Because really, beyond the initial letter, they don't bother her too much until like the climax, and I wish that we'd kind of gotten a little bit more kind of scariness from them and a little more interference, because it does have a great climax, like the ending, crazy. But I wish that we'd kind of gotten a little bit more throughout, because we get like little hints of them from the investigation that the cops and this guy's doing, because he's like a former SEAL, so he gets himself involved. But I think that like there could have been more, because I just enjoy a cult plotline. So yeah, I did really enjoy that. That one's coming out April 14th, I believe. And yeah, I really liked it. I'm enjoying that series quite a bit. I believe there's only one book that I haven't read so far. And then I also shelved What If We Stopped Pretending by Jonathan Franzen, which is more of like a short essay, but you know, it's on Goodreads, so it counts. This is something that the students were reading in my TA class. Some of the other things we read just like aren't on Goodreads, so I couldn't shelve them. But that class has mainly been like shorter works. It's an intro, it's like fulfilling like writing requirement courses. So in this one for university writing, she hasn't really assigned like any novels or anything. It's primarily been like some short stories, essays, some poetry, that kind of thing. So yeah, What If We Stop Pretending is interesting. It's like an essay kind of about climate activism, and it takes more of a pessimistic tone. It's like, hey, we're not gonna be able to stop it, and being really optimistic for that is not helpful to anybody. But despite the fact that, you know, climate change is inevitable, we should still be doing these things, because doing it for the sake of like taking good action is still good. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I feel like it's not kind of a perspective or a point of view that you read a lot of in that kind of like climate activism, call to action types of writing. So it was interesting. And the assignments that they're doing with it are like looking at rhetorical analysis, so thinking about argumentative strategies. So it's been really interesting to think about it in that vein. And then the last thing that I'd like read and finished, other than, you know, the short pieces, was Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretser. I don't know why I so viscerally hate the title of that novel, but I really do. It's a terrible name for a book. It's not a good name for a fiction novel. I don't like it. After reading the book, I understand why it's titled that, and it's like a good title for the content of the story, but I don't think it's a good title for a book. But I did really enjoy this, and it was one of probably my favorite things that we read for my Wolf seminar. It's like kind of part autobiography, part fictional. A lot of it is inspired by her real life, and it's essentially about her and this, like, all this other group of 20-somethings being kind of terrible in Australia. So she is attending grad school, she's writing, she's in her master's, and she's writing her master's on Virginia Woolf. So you see a lot of like kind of the academic space at the time period, and she's at this university where like everyone loves theory and it's all about theory. So it's this idea of like including these kind of like theoretical things and how do they actually play out into your life and also into your academic writing, which is really interesting. She winds up in what he defines as a deconstructed relationship with a guy who already has a girlfriend, and it makes her go a little bit crazy. And then she has these friends that are kind of on the sidelines that are all like artists or other like grad students in the arts. And actually the guy that she's seeing is in an engineering program, I believe, but like he loves photography. He's like, I would have loved to be a photographer. So he's kind of like into this bohemian lifestyle, even though he's like not living it or is not on a trajectory to live it. And I don't know, it's just really interesting. I enjoyed the writing. Not everybody in the class loved the writing a ton, but I think we were much less divided on this than we were on Three Parties. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. There's all the stuff about like Wolf, and Wolf is like the wolf mother, and hers is kind of like foremother for academia and for writing and for living. And then there's also like her relationship with her own mother. One of my favorite things was the prose is kind of interesting. Like it breaks up, the narrative breaks up, it shifts between topics really fluidly, but kind of set as its own text, set like away from the like narrative storyline. You'll get like voice messages that her mother left her, and I really loved that. I thought it was really clever, and I really enjoyed like what it added to the story. So that was kind of one of my favorite parts. But yeah, I really wound up enjoying Theory and Practice. That and The Hours were probably my favorite novels. And I actually think that I enjoyed both of those more than I enjoyed any of the actual Wolf books, which maybe isn't that surprising because I do just like tend to enjoy more contemporary writing than I enjoy modernists and Wolf. But I have enjoyed Wolf more this time around than I did when I like first started reading her fiction. I think A Room of One's Own kind of always hits. So I had read that before, and so I knew what I was getting into with that. But yeah, the only fiction I'd read prior was Jacob's Room. So probably Orlando is the book that I've enjoyed the most. It's harder, I think, to read than like something like Mrs. Dalloway. But I think that it's more fun, and I think it's more interesting to me, maybe. That's maybe a bold claim. But yeah, I don't know. Would recommend Theory and Practice and The Hours. Okay, so I've submitted my last response for George Eliot. I think I'll probably submit my reply tomorrow, because those don't need to be submitted within the week of when the prompts were posted. So essentially this one ended with, like, what are we as readers to make of Eliot's judgment of Gwendolen through the figure of Duranda, a judgment which could be argued to frame Gwendolen's accumulations of sins as one made from a wicked, albeit recoverable nature, rather than from an instinct of survival, are both things being equated. So I kind of focused my response really on like discussing how Gwendolen is kind of positioned throughout, and this is really like the big climax of Gwendolen's life and all the things that have been happening to her, of the fact that like Gwendolyn is a morally imperfect and complicated character, because the things that she's doing, like she's not a horrendous, awful person, but she's also not making like amazing, morally pure choices either. And so like within that kind of complicated morality, Deronda's guidance and the advice that he's giving her is kind of inadequate for the realities of her life, like because of the circumstances around like her social position and within her marriage, and even within, as we see in this novel, like she references being a child and daydreaming about being able to sail away where like no one could control her, and where she didn't have to be around people that she didn't want to be around because she didn't like when her father-in-law, which I feel like that maybe means when her like stepfather, she didn't like when he was around. And so like her not having control at any point throughout her life, and then she's being given this guidance to essentially like make a martyr of herself and turn herself to just like looking at things outside of her for comfort, and to like learn about other things, and to devote herself to others and to other people and basically everything outside of herself. But she actually doesn't have the power or the control to be able to do that, and so she's like fighting a losing battle. So I kind of talked about that like the advice isn't necessarily bad, but it's not like suitable or possible for Gwendolyn to like truly implement. And also like, is it even incredible advice? I don't think it's like great advice, but it's not like awful. It's just not suitable or realistic to what Gwendolyn is actually dealing with, or to the things that she has like within her reach. And also like, is it suitable to ask that of everybody? Is that how everybody should be living their life? Like, is that realistic, or is it even like what you want to seek out? So that's kind of what I discussed a little bit. I do also think that in that book, so what was that one called? Mother and Son, I think. I think something that's been interesting in that section, and as we're continuing, and like we got more of Daniel and Mordecai's relationship, which is so weird. It's really interesting how Daniel responds to kind of the demands in the position that Gwendolyn places him in versus the one that Mordecai and Mira place him in, because I think that they really are doing the exact same thing. Like they're making the same demands of him. They're placing him, Mordecai is placing him more as like an equal and wanting to mentor him so that Daniel can go and do more than him. So he's both like seeing Daniel as this kind of like savior, but also as an equal and someone to tutor. And that is also because Mordecai is also a man and has this knowledge. But Mira is very similar. Like she sees Daniel as a savior. She wants Daniel's approval on everything. Like she wants to make decisions that she knows that he'll like, or she wants to, you know, receive his, and she like wants to receive his knowledge of things. And actually she goes through something really similar in this, I believe it's in this section, or it's at the very end of the last book, where she's also realizing, oh hey, Daniel like had a life outside of, you know, the 10 minutes a week that he spends with us. That's crazy. Just like how Gwendolyn does, but I think with Gwendolyn, it's framed much more as egotism, and it's this like fault that she's that's kind of constantly being pointed out by the narrative, or something that like she needs to work through or work on, or something that she needs to overcome in a different way than Mira. And Mira also sort of overcomes it quicker because she has someone like Mordecai. Like she's like, hey Mordecai, don't you hate that Daniel like talks to these other people? What do you make of that? And he's like, no, I'm glad that he has it. He like knows more about these other things than I do. It'll like really help him when he goes to, you know, colonize stuff. And so Mira, because she's so also devoted to her brother, is able to kind of like overcome or recognize that pettiness a bit faster. So she is also like seeing it as like, oh, I need to be better because I like have these expectations or these opinions about Daniel. But like it's the same thing where her world is so narrow that she doesn't realize that Daniel has relationships outside of the ones that he has with her, and then when she's confronted with it, she's like uncomfortable. And the same happens with Gwendolyn, but I think that it's presented as like a bit more of a moral failing, and maybe it's just because Gwendolyn's going through a lot more, and she is also kind of making more outright demands on Daniel, or more, maybe not like outright demands, but kind of more fraught. She has more fraught feelings towards him, whereas Mira kind of just wants to make him happy, but some of that is also because Daniel's like really happy to undertake this kind of like guardianship of Mira because he's more attracted to her and because she is this kind of perfect character. Like even when she is acting flawed, it's in a good way, in a way. So I find that really interesting, the way that his responses to that is kind of contrasted, because he has, it's maybe not as extreme, but he even has similar reactions with Hans, like the idea that Hans and these other like English characters don't realize that Daniel, you know, would have normal feelings, and he's like irritated and frustrated by that, but he doesn't necessarily have the same response to Mordecai and Mira, who are arguably, especially Mordecai, making much more extreme demands on him and his time. And I think some of that is that idea of like nature versus nurture, and he does like feel some kind of obviously like affinity to Mordecai, so it doesn't feel as kind of burdensome maybe as the role that he's playing with Gwendolyn does. But I will say, because we've kind of discussed like, oh, and he's like not asking for it with Gwendolyn, he keeps going around and he keeps being like, let me like save her, let me like place myself in her path because I need to like speak with her. I know that she wants to speak with me. Like he does not avoid it, even once he realizes the position that she's like placed him in, or like how she sees him. He's like, yeah, let me like continue to kind of feed into this. He doesn't really attempt to separate himself in any meaningful way until the very end, where he's like, by the way, I'm off, I'm disappearing. And she's like, oh, that's crazy, that's not great for me. So yeah, I don't know, I just find that how that is all like contrasting really interesting. And also like the different experiences of Judaism for like the male versus the female characters, which like Leonora articulates really well, and how that's kind of contrasted, but is also acted out by Mira's life as well. It's all like really complicated, which I actually appreciate as much as it's frustrating me. But now I'm just continuing to hopefully wrap up grading these bibliographies. And I've also like made notes for my own proposal. It's pretty short, it's like max 500 words. So I've kind of gotten out the parts for like what I want to say and like what I want to do for my project. But then the second part was doing like the bibliography bit, like discussing sources that you want to use. And I've kind of got sources picked out and like generally how I'll use them, but I wasn't sure if it was meant to be like arranged like a typical annotated bibliography, or if we're just kind of like discussing them within a paragraph. But I had a confab with the other PhD students that are in that class. It's just supposed to be arranged in a pretty short paragraph. I don't think that should take too long. So yeah, I'm just gonna get back to it.